Hey, this is Dale back. Just got done doing my 5 mile run. That was what the Hal Higdon schedule had me to do today, is 5 miles on my second day. Just kind of build up your stamina. I'm doing the intermediate schedule, so it's not really meant for people that are first-time runners. If you go on their website, you can just Google Hal Higdon. There are so many sites that have his information and his schedules. They have schedule for beginners and intermediate. If you're trying to beat your your time that you did before, maybe you're trying to train for a full marathon. I'm trying to do a half. That's really where I feel good at. Maybe one day I'll do a whole. Right now it just seems to be a little out of my reach, but I really do want to have a good half-mile time this time. And I think last time I talked about consistency and preparation, and again, that makes all the difference. I remember when I ran the Wichita Marathon. It's called the Prairie Fire Marathon. I did not prepare for that marathon very well, and it was my worst marathon ever. And I think I ran that just a little over 3 hours, and I was just being tortured from about mile 8 in. And again, it's all about preparation. You got plenty of time to prepare. Run consistent, every day. Be consistent to it. Keep your promises to yourself. But thing I want to talk about today, as far as running, it's real important for me, is I always monitor my heart. And I have a tool here that I use. This is a Garmin 225. It's a GPS watch. It also has a heart monitor on the back of it, and put that on your wrist, and it measures your pulse, keeps track. Some people say they're not as accurate as the chest straps, but they're just so much more comfortable. I think it gives you a good enough reading. I haven't found anything. I know when I ran with my chest strap, I could feel when my heart was getting to around 171 beats a minute. I really didn't even have to look at the watch. I could tell. And this one seems to be right in line with that. I just looked just a little while ago. I think you can get this watch now for probably around $100 if you just kind of look around on Amazon or eBay. But you can find cheaper ones, and there's Fitbits, and just Garmin even has a one that's just strictly a heart rate monitor, or Polaris has them, and you can get them for $19-20. It's important that you monitor your heart. There's two things that happen. One, for me, I want to make sure that I don't work myself too hard. I don't want to push myself. I've had trouble with blood pressure and things like that. So, when I see my heart getting up around 171, I'll back it down. I'll walk for a little while until I get my heart to a more manageable level. But it also works on the other end. Sometimes you get out there, you don't feel like running, or maybe you're running and you're just kind of taking it easy, and you can look down and your heart's only beating 120 beats a minute. You got to go, man, come on, I need to pick this thing up. I'm just not working myself. And so you can push yourself. You don't have to lie to yourself and tell yourself you're tired, or you just can't do it today. The numbers on the watch, they really don't lie. So it can kind of push you to get your heart rate up there into that area where you can really get a good burn going. And so it's important to monitor your heart, which reminds me of what Jesus taught his disciples. Jesus told his disciples, he said, you heard it, that's wrong to murder. And he says, and I tell you that if you hate somebody, you've already committed murder with them in your heart. He says, you've heard that it's wrong, to commit adultery. He goes, but I say, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery with her. You've heard that, to love your enemies or to love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I tell you to love your enemies and pray for those who despitefully use you. Jesus said all the time there, what he's saying is, guys, I'm monitoring your heart. You need to monitor your heart. You need to look at your heart and see the condition it's in. The Bible tells us to examine ourselves and make sure that we're in the faith. Make sure that we're following and serving Him. And so it's so important that we do monitor our heart when we run, and monitor our hearts when we live, and make sure that we're living out what we say we believe. It's easy to let that heart go. I always kind of makes me reflect when I hear people say, well, God knows my heart. And man, sometimes I cringe when I think about that. That sometimes that doesn't give me peace of mind, because the Bible tells us the heart is deceitful above all things. And so, it's so important that we, surrender our lives to Christ. And the Bible says that I'll take away that heart of stone. He goes, I'll give you a heart of flesh, a heart that's soft and pliable, a heart that God can work with and God can move in. And no matter what you've been through, if maybe you've been abused, maybe you've come through difficult situations and circumstances, sometimes that's why I like getting out and running, because I can process all these things through my mind. I can kind of think about them. I can pray about them. I can meditate on them and just talk to the Lord. And what I have found out is that the Lord, that He heals the brokenhearted, that He binds up the wounds, that He'll set us free. And so really today when I was out running and I was looking at this heart rate monitor, and then every time I would look at it, I would just kind of think, God, I really need you to help me monitor my heart. So that's kind of my word for today. If you're training, and you have some thoughts or you have some suggestions or help for me, I appreciate it. I'll take all your comments. I'll read them, and use them to make myself better. I hope this word encourages you today. If you like what you heard, please hit like or subscribe, and I'll try to keep them coming.